It's not whiskey or whiskey with an E. And technically speaking, it's not moonshine either. Technically. Let's drink some poitin. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm Christy's bar Kilkenny, the home of Whiskey, and I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian. As I said at the start, we aren't drinking whiskey today. Instead, going to opt for something same, but different. I'm going to be drinking some Killowen Irish Poitin. This is the extremely limited edition Kwiga Poitin from Killowen Distillery. For those of you that don't know, and why not, Killowen Distillery is Ireland's smallest distillery. Small but mighty. Located in the Mourne Mountains of County Down and is the brainchild of founder Brendan Carty. The 24th distillery to become operational in Ireland, which has somewhat of a cult-like following with an actual Facebook group called the Killowen Cult. So, link below. To date, they have released a number of different styles of spirits, some their own and some not so much, but we are mainly focusing on their newest and most special release to date, their own Kwiga Poitin. Now, this is not the first released Poitin from the much-loved distillery. Back in 2019, they released their first ever small batch Poitin, which I never got the opportunity to try, but I did hear amazing things about it. And anytime this distillery brings out a release, you'd want to be fairly quick on the computer to get your orders in fairly lively. They always sell out their products extremely quickly, and it demands a fairly hefty secondary market value. Which, if you want the whiskey bad enough, it can cost you. So what's different about this release? A couple of things. Firstly, it was kind of released on the quiet to a very few lucky members of the Killowen Cult Facebook group. Lucky me. And there were very few made available for the retail stores nationwide. Bummer. So if you didn't get a set and you're wondering what they might taste like, you're in the right place, because that's exactly what we are at today. Secondly, I'm told there are more oats used in the particular mash bill as a tribute to the integral part oat has played in Irish distillation history. Oh, and yeah, these bad boys, they're peated. Now, I'm taking this in the press release that Brendan explains the Kwiga is a spirit representing Ireland's history and present, acknowledged her historical 5 provinces by finishing a unique Poitin in 5 different firkin casks from 5 selected breweries, each representing those old provinces. The Irish word Kwiga, meaning provinces or fifths, originated prior to the cessation of Meath as a province in the early 1600s. After a 24-hour flame-fed double distillation and worm tub condensation, the spirit is laid in firkin casks at full strength for 10 weeks, as is the maximum allowable time by law. More on that in a second. Each bottle is then hand-filled, hand-labeled, wax-dipped, and handwritten. Each set has its own unique rustic pedestal made from a Killowen cast stave, which has been heat-straightened, carved for bottles, engraved with a Killowen Kwiga logo, and of course wax-finished. Lovely. This is a very rare release, and interestingly enough, all the information on their mash bill can be found at the back label of each of the bottles. Now that's transparency. The names and images for each bottle come from different locations carrying particular affection to Killowen Distillery and places which Killowen think signify each Kwiga. I hope I'm saying that right because I didn't have to do Irish when I was in secondary school. Lucky. Starting with the best county first, Leinster, Duff. Duff Hill, middle of the mighty Wicklow Mountains. Ulster, Donard, the highest mountain in the Mournes, God's country. Munster, Mish, the Slieve Mish Range to the east of the Dingle Peninsula. Hello. Connacht, Lottie, a remarkable, beautiful and remote part of Galway. Gorgeous. Meath, Cally, Slieve na Cally, largest peak in Meath. I hope I'm saying that right. So this is all great, right? But some of you not in the know might be thinking, well, isn't Poitin just really kind of young whiskey? Not exactly. There are some technicalities to the spirit. Kind of. Technical terms. Actually, so much so that it has its own technical file, which is basically like a rule book of sorts. And it has geographic indication, which means if it's labeled as Irish Poitin, then it has to be made on the island of Ireland and adhere to the specifications set out in the technical file. Sounds technical. Well, let's get technical on knowledge. Irish Poitin is a traditional Irish distilled beverage with no definitive official date recorded as to when it was first produced. The word Poitin stems from the Irish word pota for pot. This refers to the small pot still used by Poitin distilleries. It is a spirit distilled on the island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland, traditionally brewed, fermented and distilled from cereals, grains, whey, sugar beet molasses and potatoes. Irish Poitin has an infamous history in Ireland, having gained somewhat of a notorious reputation of being an illicit spirit whose production was illegal from 1661 to 1997 due to excise regulations. It is traditionally a clear, non-aged spirit, and this is the key difference between Irish Poitin and Irish whiskey, which is matured in wooden casks for not less than 3 years. The illicit nature of Irish Poitin meant there were no official controls over the alcohol content, which led to a variety of strengths being produced. Since 1997, modern day Irish Poitin is a minimum of 40% ABV, with some products as high as 90%. The maximum allowable ABV of Irish Poitin is 94.7% ABV. There are some differences between Irish whiskey and Poitin when it comes to the mash bills and distillation methods, but the main area of interest here for me really is the maturation times, which you can't say maturation, you technically have to say stored or held in a wooden cask for X amount of weeks, not exceeding 10 weeks, by the way, which is the maximum allowable resting time. Now, there is a ton more information on the technical file, which of course I will link below because in the interest of time, there is really way too much to cover, way too much. And I do like to try and keep these videos under 15 minutes. There's a lot of information out there. Irish Poitin was once so mass produced that according to Aeneas Coffey, who before he invented the coffee still was an excise officer in Donegal, the Inishowen Peninsula alone had at least 800 stills operating illegally. That's a lot of hooch. All right, so enough of the history and the technical talk. Let's move on to the Poitin. There's still a lot to get through. And as is customary at this point of the video, if you in any way liked any of that info or the tech talk / history I gave on the Poitin and Killowen, shoot me a little thumbs up and consider subscribing while also hitting the little notifications bell thingy. It helps with the SEO on the page and it makes me feel good. And to be honest, it's really more about making me feel good. And now to the Poitin. So to save a little time, all of these are at an ABV of 55%. All of them are 250 ml. All of them are bottle number 27 out of 190. I did say this was a very rare release. And all of them have the exact same mash bill of 50% peated barley, 21.6% unmalted, 14.2% oat, malted and peat smoked on site, 7.1% wheat, and 7.1% rye. There's a lot going on in here. They're poured and in the glass. Let's do this. Okay, I'm gonna get into where these are different as we go through them, and we can start with the very best county of all, Leinster. This is Duff, named after Duff Hill in the Wicklow Mountains, and this has been rested for 10 weeks in a Dreamcatcher IPA cask from O Brother Brewing in County Wicklow. Nice. Okay, on the nose, interesting. A lot of smoke forward. Obviously, as these are peated Poitins. There is almost like a saltiness to it, nearly kind of an iodine-y type nose. Not in a bad way, you know, it does kind of give that hint of like salted caramelness to it. You have your little bit of cereal grains, which, you know, for something as young as this, you would expect. It's not overpowering, it's not crazy. And there's a little hint of like kind of citrusy notes to it. That's nice. It's different, it's totally different for me. Have a little sip, Slainte. Smoke. There's a lovely kind of berry sweetness to it. And that salted caramel note is really coming through. Yeah, it's oily. It's a little bit puckery. Lip smacking, actually. Some dark chocolate vibes coming through a little bit, but that kind of berry and salted caramel sweetness that's quite pleasant. Yeah, definitely dark chocolate, berries. I hate saying on the finish that it's smooth, but it is really smooth. It's just plenty of heat, but it's not overbearing, and it's still juicy. A slight touch of bitterness on the finish, but again, the dark chocolate comes through, little bit of the grain, a hint of booziness off of it, like a little bit beery. That's probably from the cask, and a tiny hint of something like grapefruit. Weird. So next up, we're gonna go with Ulster and Donard, named after the highest mountain in the Mournes, and again, rested for 10 weeks in Belfast Black Stout casks from Whitewater Brewing Company in County Down. So on the nose, again, you're getting the smoke forward. A little bit more kind of hay coming through, but also a sweeter kind of caramel sweetness, or I want to say that kind of a hint of like a confectionery sweetness. Little bit of white pepper spice on the nose, but this one is a little bit more, this one's a little bit more earthy, even like a kind of a slight kind of coffee note to it, that kind of earthiness to it. Yeah, a little bit more earthy, I would say, than the Leinster, the Duff. Let's have a little sip. Slainte. These are so good. Yeah, your smoky loveliness that you're getting, you're going to get them all across here, but it's balanced well. It's not as spicy as the Leinster. It's a little bit more tame. It seems like a touch sweeter, not bitter. You certainly have the coffee and even kind of like a milk chocolate note coming through. The cereals, again, you're having that are quite prevalent, a little bit oily, quite heavy. It's not as bright as the last one. This one's a little bit kind of, if you know, I do this weird thing with color spectrum. You know, it's not, this is very vibrant and bright and in your face, and this one's just a little bit more kind of chilled out, I guess. Slainte, another sip. The finish, much the same as before, except not as much kind of bitterness and a touch more spice hanging around on the finish. On the original palate, there wasn't as much spice as the last one. Now on the finish, there is a little bit more spice, which is kind of weird, but you know, you're having your grains come through, a little bit of cereal notes, smokiness. I want to say kind of a cocoa, I think, but there's a very subtle stoutness to it as well. That kind of stout earthiness note to it. It's good. Need some water after that. We are now going to move on to Munster and Mish, named after the Slieve Mish range to the east of the Dingle Peninsula. 10 weeks in Carrickdove Porter from West Kerry Brewery Co., County Kerry. Hope I said that right. If not, I'm sure you'll tell me. On the nose, let's see. Interesting. There's not as much smoke forward on this one, and this one kind of reminds me a small bit of the rum cask release they did not so long ago. I had a bottle of it. I was going to do a review on the channel, but I drank it all, and then I was left with nothing. Sorry. There's almost kind of like a fig kind of note to it, those kind of like stone fruits, quite soft nosing, as in like, you know, very well kind of rounded, if you will. Not as much spice or grain or even spirit forward as the other two. Just subtle hints of like hay, maybe, you know, a small bit of grapefruit. I kind of tend to pick up, my nose for some reason associates that with grapefruit, whatever way that is. It's probably because my nose is stupid. I don't know. But this could be the start of my senses getting overloaded now a small bit with all of the cask strengths that these are doing. These are raw 55%, so, you know, these could be getting shot a little bit. Yeah, certainly more rounded than the other two. Have a little sip, Slainte. Smoky, obviously, oily. The figs are making it across to the palate. A little touch of bitterness in it, kind of a dark chocolate note to it as well. I'm actually really digging the peated notes from these. It's really good. And I seem surprised. I mean, I shouldn't be. Killowen do great stuff. They know what they're doing up there. always translates well. Wow. I'll tell you something towards the end, but you're gonna be surprised. But have another little sip, Slainte. Incredible. Yeah, a little bit more bitterness, a little bit more chocolate. Can't get over the peat, it's lovely. On the finish, dark chocolate kind of note, a little bit of maybe even cocoa. There's plenty of white pepper spice. You're gonna hint of the dried fruits carrying through. Not much, mind you. There's actually some real hang time in this one. And it's surprisingly not that boozy. Good too, also very good. Some 3 in a row that are absolutely smashing poitíns. I might have said whiskey, sorry about that, but these are poitíns. Really good, more water. We are slowly but surely getting there, and now a real fear has become apparent. Am I going to have any nose or taste buds left for the final 2? These are quite strong, and generally speaking, when you're doing nosings and stuff like this, your biggest fear is that your senses will get shot. So we are going to move on to Connacht now, and the Lottie, a remote part of Galway. Never been, must go. 10 weeks in Red Triple from Meskin Brewery, County Mayo. Hope I said that right. So on the nose, smoky, obviously. Again, getting those kind of fig notes, but I'm also getting a kind of fruity note to it, but I can't quite put my finger on what exactly that fruit note is. I got a hint of kind of a perfumey note to it. Now the figs are back now, even a little bit of caramel, some hay, a little bit more spirity than the other ones, kind of. You know, I can't remember which one at this stage now. We're knee deep in it. Punchy, definitely punchier on the nose than some of the other ones. Quite nice though. Let's have a little sip. Slainte. Okay, oily. Much smokier I'm getting than the other ones. There's a fruitiness to it, berry kind of fruitiness. Still getting all the notes like the others, but this is just kind of much sweeter. Ripe berries, I want to say, very different, very puckery, very smoky to me. Slainte, number 2. Beautiful spice. Again, that sweetness coming through, that puckeriness to it, juicy, salivating. The finish, you know, there's no dark chocolate here like the other ones. It's kind of more the berries with the spice kick and, you know, a touch of kind of, even a touch of saltiness, a touch of earthiness. It's very delicious, very good. They're all very good. But that one's a little bit more earthy, kind of coming through. Savage. And now, my friends, the big finish. My palate is just shot, so this couldn't come soon enough. I hope I do justice to this. We are going to finish on the last one, the County Meath, and the Loughcrew Sleeve Nacali. I hope I said that right. Largest peak in Meath, 10 weeks in Imperial Stout casks from Dead Centre Brewing in County West Meath. Let's get it on the nose. So by now, obviously, kind of, you know, we're getting those smoky notes. And this is a lot more kind of a coffee nose to it, and caramel, even salted caramel, I want to say. A bit earthy with some kind of nice hay notes coming through. Not too heavy on the spice, but still, you know, it's obviously going to be there. Even a touch of grain coming through nicely. Still very sweet. Let's have a sup. Slainte. More smoke coming through here. And salted caramel, again, with the juiciness, nice spice, real refreshing and sweet. This is kind of more rounded than the others. The kind of salted caramelness to it, you know, the salt bites through, but the caramel rounds it, and that kind of meets a chocolate type of vibe to it with, you know, a bit of booziness from the stout casks. That's what I'm getting on the palate. That's a lot to take in. You can pull these apart, you know, quite well. There's little subtle nuances in each one that kind of really add to the characteristics of the poitin itself and what the casks, I should say, that they've sat in. Another sip, Slainte again. Yeah, booziness from the stout cask is definitely there. You know, your salted caramel, smoky, a little bit more smokier, I think, than the other ones, but again, it'll come to the end of 5, so it sticks out a little bit more. That could just be my palate is shot, I don't know, but even on the finish now, chocolatey, grainy, hay kind of notes. There's plenty of spice. Again, that could be my palate is just kind of shot for now, but you know, plenty of cereal notes to it as well. It's really nice. It is really nice. It's not exactly what I expected from any of these, and there's a touch of bitterness creeping in at the end, but the spice kind of takes care of that and wipes it. Doesn't wipe it out entirely, but it's just, you know, balances it out quite nicely. Wow. In the end, and to be totally transparent, I've never really had poitin. That's what I meant when I said earlier I'd tell you something at the end, but I've had poitin, but you know, it's not like this stuff. It's the type of stuff that would actually start a fire and probably run a car engine. I suppose a better way of saying it would be I've never quite had poitin or anything for that matter like this. And wow, my eyes are totally opened to something new here. And I love what Killowen do. I've had a number of their whiskies and the owners just, you know, live for transparency and trying new things. And I suppose they aren't really afraid to try things would be a better way of explaining it. You know, just innovation forward and free thinking. But yeah, these kick ass and hit fairly hard. Definitely a premium based poitin that delivers big on flavors and on spice. I urge you, if you're a nerd like me and like to do a bit of reading, guilty, then check out the poitin technical file in the link below. Some of the history behind the spirit is a great read, and to be honest, it's a close cousin of whiskey and has a huge part to play in Ireland's history. Hats off to Brendan and the lads at Killowen for an outstanding release. I'd love to see more like this and can't wait to see what they have to release next. I will leave all links to the relevant channels, groups, and web pages below for you to check out, and of course keep up to date with all new releases and info from my Instagram, and the link is below for that. If you haven't started following me, you should. As always, thank you to the lads here at Christy's bar. I think I might donate these bottles to the bar, or I might not, so I haven't decided. If you want, you can come and check it out when we're open and see are they here. But you know, stuff like this, everybody should be able to try and come up with their own opinions on. I'm doing my best here to share the love to you guys. So that's all I got. It's been a pleasure. Until next week, the Whiskey Chaser, out. Slainte.